The art of the remix is hella fascinating, especially when the remix is arguably better than the original. It happened when Mary J. Blige joined Method Man for the remix of All I Need, and again when ODB blessed Mariah Carey with his appearance on the remix of Fantasy. I digress. Today we're exploring the art of the remix, but in areas you might not expect, like grenades and food, film and comic books. It's the magic of taking disparate objects and putting them together. Sometimes people are precious about preserving the original vision, but I'm making it my mission to convince you that every now and then, it's good to see things in a fresh light. Welcome to CBC Arts Exhibitionists.
I'm Dave Krovblit. I'm a photographer and visual artist. All the work that I do, I think, ties brand and consumerism together, consumption. Those ideas are part of each series that I've created. I had a project that was a commercial. It was just taking random objects and crushing them in a vise. I thought the assignment was so cool that I would continue on with it as an art project. I bought a decommissioned grenade and I put it in the vise, and every time I turn the handle of the vise, I think this thing's just gonna blow the studio to pieces. And it's totally irrational, like, you know, the grenade is like a hollow piece of steel. So I abandoned the grenade. I literally put it in the corner of the studio. 2 months passed, and I look up and I see the grenade. Hey, that sort of looks like an egg. An egg's a symbol of life. A grenade is the shape of an egg, but a symbol of the opposite. I think egg, you know, word association, Fabergé egg.
What was once considered an Easter gift, passed among the czars of Russia, is now considered a rare treasure. 4 of the 43 precious eggs by jeweler Carl Fabergé are in Montreal, which is considered a rare treat.
Very rare nowadays. You have to imagine that the insurance value of these eggs is in the tens of millions of dollars.
And so I go looking, do a little research, and through that process I found that Fabergé did in fact make grenades at the end of World War I. There's a story that speaks of a jeweler whose jewelry factory was turned into a munitions facility. He ended up supplying over 6 million grenades for World War I. About a week later, I have this first Fabergé grenade. And not only is it this cool juxtaposition, but there's this incredible story of history now that's tied to the thing. A grenade is so volatile and destructive, you wouldn't want to hold it. And Fabergé egg is so beautiful and delicate and priceless, you wouldn't want to hold it. You fast forward to modern day time, you have this series called exploit grenades, and it speaks to exactly the same things. These big businesses are tied to making weapons. The series speaks about not only war, but how sometimes the products themselves are the culprit. Weapons such as guns and grenades are commonly replicated as children's toys, and I think we're being desensitized. These children's toys are made with cheap plastics that take out the weight and seriousness of the actual object. My grenades series was noticed by a creative team at a US agency, and they commissioned me to make a series of images in a way that's helping to combat opioid abuse. The idea behind art for me is that it's provocative enough that it stops you and you want to look. More than that, it needs to have more than just a visual. It needs to have a backstory. And the backstory is what drives the visual home. That's the magic of it. You look and you're like, that's incredible. How was it done?
I love the irony in Dave's work. These two things that have absolutely nothing to do with each other are brought together to create this ironic twist. It's luxury and beauty and war and destruction. I'm your host, Amanda Paris, and this week we are exploring the art of the remix. The culinary arts are a constant space of experimentation. Polish pierogies are combined with Trinidadian rotis and a new meal is born, the pierogi. But this next artist is interested in challenging the very purpose of food, remixing it from a form of sustenance into pieces of art. And we'll get to see just how she does it from start to finish. Take a look.
Got some kale, avocado, daikon. Food art is different from other kinds of art forms because the medium is very dictating to the end product. Apple, ginger, and a Chinese eggplant. My name's Lauren Ho, and I'm a food artist that makes art out of fruit and vegetables. I started making food art working on my friend's food truck, and then as popularity increased for the pictures, I started making my own Instagram account. Today I'm making a West Coast scene with a mountainscape and a tree blowing in the wind on a cliff overlooking the ocean. I'm going to be using cauliflower to make the clouds. I'm going to cut open this yam to see what it looks like inside. Oh, nice. It's really orange. Yams are really easy to carve, so I'll give a nice clean line for the bark. When you're working with fruit and vegetables, it's like, because there's so much color and texture that is the impact of the image, you have to keep it really simple. So if you have things that are too complicated or things that are really juicy and runny, then you won't get the same impact if it's not as clean lined. Now I'm gonna select the kale, start making some leaves. Often when I'm making things, I'll just kind of like place them kind of where I want them to go, and then once I have everything together, then I'll do my final adjustments. I would say inspiration can come from just like my environment, like just walking around and seeing like a cool tree or like a cool object that I'm like, oh, that'd be fun to recreate that somehow. Or by just looking through the grocery store again and finding produce that is interesting looking that I want to carve up. All right, so for the mountain, I know I want to use the eggplant for sure because I love this purple color. And probably the beet. I'll just kind of see what things look nice together. Fears about being an artist is imposter syndrome of thinking like, oh, I don't belong in this community, or my work is, not good enough to be on like a larger scale. That's definitely something that I think about, but as long as I'm having fun and creating stuff, then I think that's just kind of the beauty of being an artist, is just what you get out of it personally. I really like using the meat of citrus to do water because it has that nice sort of illuminated look to it. Future aspirations with my food art would be just to continue making images for myself to keep my creative juices flowing. And also I'd love to make a kid's book one day.
My name is Gustavo Cerquera, and I'm this week's Exhibitionist in Residence. I'm originally from Bogota, Colombia, but I've been living in Canada for almost 17 years. My artistic and animation practice is heavily influenced by my Colombian background. So I'm really interested in the landscape, strange biology, the weird things that might happen in a jungle, but also things like dreams and altered state of consciousness, with a bit of horror, but mixing it with humor. So please enjoy some of these clips that I've done in the last couple of years. And please follow me online if you want and see what I'm up to in the next couple of months. All right, cheers.
Coming up, we're heading to the movies to watch a remix of a movie made from clips of people watching the original movie in other movies. Night of the Living Dead is an iconic horror film that rewrote the rules for the genre and created the groundwork for every zombie film, TV show, and comic book that followed. We've all heard the iconic line, "They're coming to get you, Barbara." But have we all heard it because we've watched the movie or because we've watched other people watching the movie? When Dave Dyment realized that there were a ton of people watching Night of the Living Dead in movies and TV shows that he was watching, he wondered why. And it led to this one-of-a-kind remix.
My name is Dave Dyment. I'm an artist. I'm standing in front of the Southern Albertan Art Gallery in Lethbridge, Alberta, where tonight my new film, Watching Night of the Living Dead, will debut. Watching Night of the Living Dead is a 136-minute film that takes the original 1968 zombie classic, Night of the Living Dead, by George Romero, and kind of reanimates it using footage found from other television shows, other movies, in which the characters themselves are watching the original film. So the origin for the project was I was listening to the director's commentary for the film Sid and Nancy, and there's a scene in which Gary Oldman as Sid is in a hospital watching television, and the film that he's watching is Night of the Living Dead. And the director, Alex Cox, explains on the commentary track that the reason they chose that film over any other was because it was in the public domain and they could use it for free. Because of a very small clerical error involving the lack of the copyright C symbol, the movie was never protected by copyright. So the filmmakers did not profit a single penny from this piece that they poured their life savings into and all of their time. It was a real labor of love production. If it had been in the public domain, it probably wouldn't have shown incessantly at drive-ins, every Halloween for 50 years on television. So the thing that prevented them from earning any royalties also established, cemented their personal legacies. When I give talks about my work, the first question invariably is always about copyright. And I'm typically a bit rude. I dismiss it out of hand and say that I don't care about copyright. And what I mean is that I don't care about litigation. I'm not fearful that I'm going to be sued.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
But it's an incorrect answer to the question because, of course, I am extremely interested in copyright in terms of the way that it functions, the way that it can influence and shape a culture. Something that's ostensibly designed to protect culture often has, of course, negative repercussions. And I think this project perhaps best exemplifies that idea within my practice and serves as the best possible case study for what type of impact copyright can have on an artwork. So as you might imagine, the research on this became a little bit obsessive. I would spend hours and hours and hours essentially searching variations on phrases in Google to try and track down the information that I needed, to the extent that Google sent me on more than one occasion a message saying that we have detected suspicious activity from your account, and that I had to sit out basically for an hour in the corner to ensure that I wasn't scraping for data.
You better watch this and try to understand what's going on.
I made a work a couple of years ago called The Day After Tomorrow, and it consisted of me spending about a year finding every single disaster film that had ever been made. And then I took those films and I edited out all the extraneous information so that the only thing you saw was the scenes of destruction. And then I arranged them across 20 monitors so that simultaneously one could stand in front of this series of TV sets and watch 20 different locales all at the same time, all being destroyed, and then they were looped, so it sort of becomes this infinite wall of destruction. And I typically work the way that an obsessive collector might. Sometimes I have to kind of get into the head of the obsessive fan to complete a project, and that's certainly the case here. Someone asked me the other day if my piece was an homage to Romero, and the answer is that it's not exactly an homage, but it's kind of about homage. It's about what happened to this small independent film made in Pittsburgh that inspired legions of other filmmakers to pick up cameras and make their own films independently.
Coming up, superheroes get remixed with a feminist twist.
It was a lot more empowering than what I thought it would be. Going well. We had some really nice days, except like yesterday was rainy, so I didn't work. I have a very limited time because we're doing a projection tomorrow, so it has to be finalized by then. My name is Sandra Chevrier. I'm a painter based in Montreal. I do show my work internationally, so I travel a lot. I'm also a mother of an 8-year-old son. I was always a very shy and introverted kid. Creating images was my way to express myself. It was my language. It was, the only way that I found that I was at ease to kind of speak. This is my time for me to be with myself, and I enjoy my solitude. If I wouldn't have these part of my life, I would probably be like a hermit in my studio. As you can see, I'm working with a paintbrush and on an old brick wall like this, and it dries really fast, so now I've developed this technique of just like putting water on the wall, and it's perfect. When I get asked to do murals, so to work outdoor, the first time I was asked, I was like, no, I would never be able to do this because I'm used to being in my studio alone. And then I just thought about, the experience and the way it would make me grow, and you get to meet people and see their reaction and their questioning about the work, and it's a very different experience. How the series started was that I was talking about my vision of how, how society puts pressure on our shoulders, or how we put pressure on us to try to be perfect and excel in everything that we do. So when I started to work on this series, I was using a lot of the Fragile Heroes images. I use a lot of women in my work. I think we all feel this pressure to be more than what we are. I got a lot of messages from people, especially women, saying that they would see my work in a totally different way than I would see it. And it was a lot more empowering than what I thought it would be. They would see these women portraits with this superhero on them and see it more as a feminist approach, like to say that we want a voice, we want to be heard, and we can.
There must be something satisfying about ripping up old comic books, rearranging them, and inserting them into these monumental paintings of women's faces. So you're welcome for anyone looking for a fun weekend activity. If there's an artist that you think should be on CBC Arts Exhibitionist, or if you just want to share your own favorite food remixes with me, like falafels, cronuts, spam cakes, or jerk bubblegum, I'd love to see them all. Send me a message on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Our handle is @CBC Arts. Tune in next week for another deep dive into the transformative work of Canadian artists. Peace.